Welcome back, new viewers and Game Bears. It is time for a new episode of the unused content in games, and today we are continuing off with a part 2 and final part of the Pokémon TCG Game Boy Color game. So let us begin, but before we truly begin, if you enjoyed this content at any point in time, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's for free and you can always change your mind later on. So let us begin with the build dates. These ASC2 strings show the date that each version was built. The AXQP version contains English, French, German, while the AXQX contains English, Spanish, and Italian. But they both share the same build date. Alright, this is the Japan version over here. These are the build dates. And at the time of them as well, it looks like. And in military time, that's 5:21 p.m. For those who might not know. Alright, next up, lowercase letters. While all the text is displayed in capital letters only, the text in the North American version of the game is actually stored in mixed case ASC2s. There is an unused RAM switch to enable the use of lowercase letters. Alternatively, one can use Shark code, this code right here, Game Shark. This makes it in the first game to spell the words Pokemon as Pokemon. I honestly don't see the difference, it's just with parentheses. And not Pokemon with all caps except for the E with the accent, at least internally. The European version, in comparison, have all their text stored in uppercase only, and here's a closer look at that. This is a club devoted to water Pokemon, as the clerk says. Our promotional rarity symbols. In this game, cards have one of 3 rarity symbols, with common, uncommon, and rare, being circle, rhombus, and star. However, internally, there are 4 rarity ranks, though for some reason the one assigned to promotional cards is an empty string. Likely they forgot to put that in, that's a possibility. Our unused save checkers. There exists a routine that was commented out, which upon landing a save file, would have checked whether or not the save was corrupted. If so, an error message would have been displayed, appropriately stating that the save data was lost. And here's a closer look at these. I'll only read the English ones. If you want possibly the other ones, you can go ahead for that. Your data was destroyed somehow. The game cannot be continued in this present condition. Please restart the game after the data is reset. Alright, dummy overworld locations. The first entry in the overworld map location list is unused, though there does exist a placeholder cursor script for its ID spot. As defined, pressing any direction on the D-pad will move the cursor over to the Science Club, though there is no corresponding player movement script. Unused move animations. The following animation pointers are not linked to any moves. Moreover, some animations themselves go unused, though they are only variants of already existing used scripts. Alright, and let's take a look at that. So the moves that go unused looks like... Alright, so I'll say some of them. Default Impact, Thunder/Thundershock copy, Thunderstorm copy, Blizzard, Psychic Hit, just Psychic, whatever. Default Beam, Multi-Slash, Needle moves, Smoke moves, Powder moves, likely Sleep Powder and Poison Powder most likely. Or some other type powder moves, maybe Powder Snow, who knows. Goo moves. Actually, that's the animation for them, that plays. Got the bubble one, the string shot effect, the Confuse Ray one, you get the gist. If you saw my playthrough, or if you've played this game before, I think you know what animations I'm talking about. Moreover, some animations themselves go unused, though they're only variants of already existing used scripts. 76 plays the waterfall/surf animation, but without any screen shaking or damage impacts. Probably just as a test run, most likely those effects just weren't finished. 81 plays the question mark animation on the opponent's side, and nothing else. Plays the poison status effect animation on the user side, but with an added damage impact. And 8B plays the sleep status animation on the user side, with an added command to update the HUD. Alright, now we move on to unused sound effects. A few sound effects go unused, all of them aside from the 5F being early in the list, away from the block of move animation sound. Alright, here's this. Alright, here's number 6. Here's another one for an explosion, it seems. Alright, here's one for giving off a shimmering feel. Alright, here's a lengthy series of bounces. Alright, another shimmery sound, maybe coin toss related. Alright, and finally, shuffling sound, likely a cut move animation sound effect. Titled F5F. Alright, next up, unused screens, test screens. The first two screens were more than likely used to test out the Game Boy Color's color range, in the form of a color wheel and TV color bars. The third one, meanwhile, simply displays the palette it is assigned. Default palette is shown first, with the last picture being an example of what the screen looks like with a different palette assigned here, the color wheels. The scene values for these screens are $0C, $0D, and $1B, respectively. And here's a closer look at these. Kind of looks like a rainbow eyeball, or a disc even. Alright, here's this little thing over here with the cutout colors, or whatever you want to call that. Here's this. And this last one. Alright, next up, unused copyright scenes, or screens. No less than 2 unused copyright screens, each with their own unique graphics. The first one is incredibly bare bones. It was likely the earliest attempt. The second screen, meanwhile, looks essentially finalized, and is clearly styled after the copyright screen of the contemporary mainline games. The second screen also has a dedicated routine associated to it, where it would have remained on screen for 300 frames, and could be skipped by pressing start. 300 frames, by the way, is about 5 seconds. So assuming it's running at 60 FPS, that's 5 seconds. If it's running at 30, that's 10 seconds. The final game would ditch the concept entirely, instead moving the copyright info to the title screen. However, the company details seen after the end credits are an evolution of that concept. The scene values for these screens are $16, $16, funny, $19, and $17 respectively. Hey, can I buy those? I'm kidding. But here's a closer look at them. Here's the early one. Alright, here's the later one. And finally, the final game. Made by Hudson Soft. As you know, they made some of the earlier Mario Party games. A little fun fact. Every Mario Party game pre-Mario Party 9, I believe. Unused title screens. Data from a fully finalized unused title screen exists, complete with a unique palette and different graphics from both Game Boy Color and Super Game Boy modes. The differences include the energy icons being static graphics instead of moving objects, the lack of a Pokeball outline, and the copyright info being nowhere to be found. The scene value for this unused title screen is $18, with a copy also found at $1, or $1A. What is $1A? Whatever. Here's a closer look at those. I prefer the full color versions of the Game Boy colored ones over the Super Game Boys, but whatever. Alright, next up, more unused cards. A Venusaur over here, Venusaur level 64, was intended to be obtained through the game's card pop feature, but is not due to a programming error. This in turn, makes the mysterious Pokemon deck and the Pokemon Dump's auto deck machine unbuildable, as it requires 2 Venusaur level 64 cards. GameShark code 01XX0AA1, where XX is the desired number of cards in hex as part of the code, will add the card to the player's album. Venusaur level 46 will later be properly obtained in the sequel as a prize at GR or Great Rocket's Island Game Center. And here's a closer look at this unused Venusaur card. Weirdly enough, the Poké Power Solar Power, which likely, in my guess, is it would have given it more grass energies, given that you had them in your hand. Or out of the deck even, that's possible too. And Mega Drain, requiring 4 grass energies, and will likely take away half of that HP from your opponent to like 20 HP since it does 40 damage. That's my guess. Alright, well, with that being said, let's look at the coding error over here real quick that this mentioned. It's a short video. Oh, never mind. You know what? I'll just leave that one in the link in the description. And along with that, that should be it. All of the unused content for the first Pokemon Trading Card game. So, yeah, you know what? Looks like it. I'll leave that in the link in the description below for this video. So if y'all enjoyed this and you want to see more, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And consider answering the question of the day, of all the unused content, what do you think should have made it into the final game? I think one of either these sound effects could have made it into the final game, or one of these animations should have made it, in my opinion. Though it would have been nice to see these animations too. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and have a perfect day. Hope you learned something new today.